everything was work, 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 7 days. With my girlfriends, I used to turn up to dinner with a book and read at the table, believe it or not.
Well, I'm joined here today with Ben Handler. Thank you very much for being here, Ben.
Thank you very much for having me, Kiani.
It's lovely to see you in the sunny background. I'm very, very jealous.
Yep, it is beautiful.
Now, all right, look, we haven't known each other for all that long, but I feel like getting to know you was a real gift in my life, and you definitely opened my eyes to a new way of the world. And you've got a pretty remarkable story about you, having been through bringing up and raising a giant corporate business and then taking the feet on your own, and now with the Buyer's Agent Institute. Tell us a little bit about your life story and, what's brought you to where you are today.
Good question. Thanks for the introduction, by the way. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I guess the backdrop for me, a critical moment was actually getting into the corporate world for me, because what it did for me when I jumped into that space was it made me want to get out of that space very quickly. So that was a pivotal transition turning point in my life, where I turned up to a corporate. This is obviously a corporation. I was an employee for a public company, a property funds management company called Charter Hall. Great company, smartest guys in town. But I learned very quickly that I don't want to be an employee. So that was a pivotal moment. And it really started back was at university when I studied a Bachelor of Building, Construction Management and Property. I thought I was going to get into construction, pivoted, went into development, worked at Charter Hall, very quickly realised I didn't want to be an employee, bounced from there, went to California, was looking for ideas, realised that the buyer's agent space was massive there. Why it hadn't blown up in Australia yet. I wasn't the first to market in Australia, so I'm first to admit that. But no one knew of what a buyer's agent was, right, 10 years ago. So I saw the opportunity and came back to Australia, launched the former company, Cohen. That was a 10-year incredible journey, and then decided to exit. And now I'm focused in the education space at the Buyer's Agent Institute. So that's where I am now, yeah, very grateful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And how have you gone taking the leap from being on the ground and dealing with the clients and finding them their dream homes and, doing the legwork to then moving into running your own business, CEO management. And now I suppose we're on the education side of it. So how much of that, it's kind of almost 3 different roles all bundled into 2 businesses. How have you gone through the transition? Was it a natural transition for you, or did you need to really kind of tailor your skill set to each role? How did you manage it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, and a lot of the skills are transferable, not actual skills of technical skills, but, skills of, like I think courage, persistence, discipline, diligence, focus, all of that comes into play, right, when you're starting a new company. So at Cohen Handler, obviously, it was very service orientated. That company was, I was working on the ground one-on-one with clients initially. Then obviously the company grew very large, and so I wasn't doing that. But we were working at Cohen Handler with clients, like literally clients who had $50 million budgets for homes, versus clients who were spending, which is $300,000 to $400,000 on an investment property. So it was very diverse, the style of client that came in that door. We were dealing very prestige typically. So it was a very high touch service. And then I moved out of the buyer's agent role and was running the company in a CEO capacity. So I was dealing a lot with management and processes and strategy and executing on the vision of the company. And we also had property management, so we were managing clients' portfolios. So that was an incredible journey, and learnt a lot, like made a lot of mistakes, learnt a lot about myself. Self-awareness was a massive thing that became very apparent during that journey, right? The mistakes and the challenges were probably the biggest gift during that time for me, because that's how I kept evolving. I was learning, right? I was an entrepreneur in the sense of I hadn't run a business before. I hadn't worked in traditional real estate. I came from a property funds management company. I was very corporate, right? Very corporate. And so I moved into this new space, and so I was learning along the way, right? And so Loved it. And then, and sales, like I'd never worked in sales before. I came from a technical background. So, learning. And then now with the new venture, the Buyer's Agent Institute, I'm back in startup mode, right? And so I'm wearing a lot of hats again, marketing, sales, strategy, like all this different stuff. I've got a team, but, I'm just grateful for the learning and for the opportunity just to, again, evolve and bring a new idea to life. I'm an ideas person, and I like to kind of think of something big and then get in there and move it forward into implementation.
Yeah, that's amazing. And from what I know about you and your journey, it's a really, really interesting one. So as you touched on at your time in Cohen Handler, you went through a bit of a life change and a life transformation, as you call it, when you kind of found yourself. What was that journey like, and what did that entail?
Well, I'm the first to admit, I started making money very young in my early 20s, and I was good at it. And so unfortunately what came with that for me, my story was very materialistic, buying cars, all the fancy stuff, but also buying property, of course. But I was very concerned with materialistic objects. So basically what happened was I became very concerned and focused on what I was acquiring and the ego and feeding the ego. And that can happen in real estate, right? So I went down that path, which is probably one of my best teachers, right? Just learning that whole concept of acquiring more, I believe, can lead to less happiness because you keep wanting more and more and more. So Cohen Handler days was a very good time for me where I learned that less is more. And then after that, I learned how to work less and earn more. Because my backdrop at Cohen Handler was I was addicted to work. I was on 7 days. I was so identified with work. Everything was work, 7 days. With my girlfriends, I used to turn up to dinner with a book and read at the table, believe it or not. So that was that was where I was, unfortunately, at the time. But it led me to realize that there's a different way to do things. And so right now, I'm on a new journey where I'm actually putting more focus into enjoying the day and putting more focus into having more time during the day and earning more money. So not that I'm trying to not work, but I want to earn more money and work less. That's my intention and my purpose now.
Yeah, but it's obviously means that the work that you are doing is more purposeful, and there is a higher benefit to what you're doing now. Correct. I was exactly the same when I started my business. It was old I'm too busy thing. I'm so busy. How are you? I'm busy. I was so busy doing a million things that nothing was getting done. Yes. Whereas you take away that kind of that addiction, as you say, the addiction to work. I was exactly the same. You take that away and you become a little bit more settled in yourself, and all of a sudden you've almost got a new perspective on the way that things can work outside of just you.
Correct. Yeah. I call it busy being busy, like it's like you wake up and you're like, why isn't my diary more full? I need more appointments in the diary. I need to be busy being busy during the day. And I remember I was reading something with Jeff Weiner from LinkedIn, right? Of the former CEO who grew that company into he was a very inspiring CEO for me during my journey. He used to purposely have a lot of time open in his calendar, a lot of time open for ideating, just for doing things, right, unstructuredly. And so that's how I'm trying to live a lot more now, and it feels a lot more like me, which is great.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I think it's really important to figure out who we are as a human and as a being on this earth, and figure out what our purpose is, to then be able to offset against what are we doing to fulfill that purpose, and then in turn what are we doing for business. So there's a lot of ways that we can find out those little things, through our lives, and one of those is through being grounded and spending time with ourselves. Do you have any rituals or habits that you do to make sure that you are being true to yourself?
Yeah. So going again back to Cohen Handler days, at the beginning of that startup business, I was, again, busy being busy. And I started to get this rash on my face and I didn't know what it was. And so I went to a dermatologist, and I'm in Sydney, and she's a very well-known dermatologist. And I kept walking in. I must have kept walking into her office on the phone, just talking when I was walking in. And she said, like, man, you need to meditate. Hey, like you've got, like, you need to watch yourself. You're not looking well. And the rash was from stress. And so she connected me to an ex-Macquarie banker, a lady in Sydney who then has moved into meditation. So my journey really started there. This was about 8 years ago, where I got introduced to meditation. That had a big impact on me. It was transcendental meditation, and then that moved into yoga for me. And then I became qualified as an instructor in yoga. And I go to India. Well, I haven't been recently, obviously, but I go to India nearly every year. And I'm very focused on trying to stay grounded, because we get so busy. We get actually quite disconnected from life itself, unfortunately, a lot of us. We're not very present during the day, I believe, a lot of us, including myself. And we forget that we're even breathing. We forget to even take a breath during the day because it's natural. So yoga is a big part of my life. I do it every day. I do it 6 days, sorry.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And did you see because I can imagine that there will have been the mindset that you have been so used to, and then the emotions that go with that mindset around being busy and always being productive and having to give results and having to please people. And, especially when you've got clients, high net worth clients, you need to be constantly overachieving. And then going through that period where you had your rash, took some time, got some advice to meditate, did you see a shift in your behavior and in your emotions from doing that?
Yeah. It's interesting point you bring up, because I feel like obviously meditation is getting a lot of airspace. It has been, thank God, in the last, especially 5 years, people are starting to embrace it a bit more. What happens is you become, I think, more present overall. And people are typically not present. So when you're talking to people in a meeting, a client's talking to you let's say pre-meditation, you're thinking about your lunch, your kids later, the dinner, what happened 20 minutes ago, and you're not even there. You're actually not there. And the clients can sense that a lot of the time. So what happened for me, and it may happen for other people, is ultimately you become more present with life. And what happens there is you become more engaged, you listen more, hopefully you can talk a bit less. And I feel like a lot of opportunity opens up when you start to become more present.
Talking less means listening more. And a lot of people forget that fundamental little piece of gold, don't they?
Well, yeah, we got 2 ears and I think 1 mouth for a reason. And for me, we work with a lot of high net worths at Cohen Handler, very successful people, because obviously we're buying a lot of homes, typically for 5 to 10, 15, 20, like it was very regularly. That was our client base, right? So and what I learned earlier on in my career, because again, I came from corporate, I was quite close in the corporate world. Then I got out and I started meeting more people, because in the corporate world, I was in an office and I wasn't getting out. I was in development. So I was dealing with the same consultants all the time, engineers, architects, builders, surveyors, etc. So I wasn't meeting a whole lot of new people all the time. So when I got out into the world, I was dealing in the buyer's agent space, and I was buying property for clients. You start to meet people, learn about them, their businesses, their stories, blah, blah. So what became apparent is that I found the really sharp people that didn't say a lot.
Yeah.
Very rarely. But when they spoke, it was really profound. And so I learned a lot from those client engagements. I learned a lot. And I think the beautiful thing with life is you can learn from everyone. It doesn't need to be someone who's got money, who's spending $10 million. You can learn from the person in a bathroom who you might be overseas, and they might be the person who provides you with a hand towel to wash your hands. And you can learn grace from that person, which there's just lessons everywhere for us. And I think that's really, that's been helpful for me along my journey.
And humble beginnings, because you need to be humble enough to receive those kinds of lessons. Not every lesson comes to you in a pretty box wrapped up with, a ribbon on top going, surprise. Sometimes they come in the most unsuspecting packages and we're just not aware of it. And I think a part of it, again, being present and opening your mind to receiving from anyone and everyone, regardless of their stature, their wealth, their gender, their religion. We can learn from everybody, can't we?
Yeah, you're right. And you said you were talking about humility, and it's very important. I think for all of us moving through life, humility is an incredibly important quality, I think, to embrace. And I definitely value and admire, and always feel, I guess, inspired when I see people who really live that way. We live in times where there's a lot of ego, and I struggle with it, and I still try and work through it. But I think we all do. However, I'm a big fan and big admirer of humility.
I agree 100%. It's been spoken about through centuries of books and journals and learnings and lessons that have come from ancient times. It's something that we're born with, and it's something that we can do. It doesn't cost us a cent. It's something that we can embody and empower whenever we want to. A lot of people, I feel, are clutching for self-help or self-guidance, books, podcasts, meditations, those kinds of things to try and find that enlightenment somewhere else. But in reality, it's all here. We've just got to stop for long enough to acknowledge it, find it, and use it.
Yeah, it's true. And I think, again, me being one of those people, like entitlement. Like, how do you move from entitlement to radical humility? We all are so entitled. I think, especially in the Western world, we think we're entitled to everything, but we're not. And we come into this world with nothing, and we leave with nothing. Like, all of us, and we're all trying to hold on to everything, like we own everything. And it's an interesting dynamic. And I think you need to, as you're saying, you need to be present with yourself. And I think we all need to be working on purpose. I've been in the education space now for just over 2 years, and what I've learned is a lot of people are very unfulfilled with the work they do. Like they're just not happy, and so I think it's interesting. It's interesting how so many people, including myself, ended up in the wrong space.
Yeah, 100%. I know that I started exactly the same way that you did. I started in corporate. And as a lot of things in life, they teach us what we do not want in our lives and how we do not want to act and we don't want to behave. But they're lessons, none the same.
I love it. And, I think it's got to do, just a side note, it's just my perspective. I think school is so backwards. I think school is traditional schooling is somewhat responsible for a lot of this. That we're not getting taught how to manage debt at school. We're not getting taught about humility. We're not getting taught about really how to prepare when we get into the world. We're not taught about meditation. Well, I wasn't at school. Maybe there is now. I feel like it's backwards. And from what I understand, it was created the employment. Like you're taught to become an employee. You're not getting taught and led to solve big problems and run businesses and do all that stuff. And so I think a lot of it's backwards. So hopefully one day it's going to change.
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree. There were things that I learned at school that have served me in my journey, zero purpose whatsoever. But when it came to filling out a tax return or writing my resume, they were things that I had to learn after school when I wanted to find a job. I know they are getting a little bit better now. My kids do mindfulness at school and a bit more. They do cozy time and some yoga and things like that, which is awesome. But it's the practical, especially with high school. I feel like year 11 and 12, and it's a lot of pressure on kids' school, especially now going through all of this. I could not imagine being in year 11 or 12 right now through COVID and having to decide what you want to be and study that at school and go through a pandemic and everything that goes with it. So it's a lot of pressure, but it would be a hell of a lot more helpful if there were some real beneficial life skills that we'll learn. I mean, if there was an entrepreneur's class at school, I would have aced it. I would have loved it.
Ah.
You know, hopefully they've got those things now correct. But, you know, my trigonometry classes I didn't really do much with.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's right. And I think hopefully it starts to evolve because it's. I don't think it works. If you look at, especially now that I've got visibility over, you know, got some data that to play with of people's situations with work. I mean, it just doesn't seem to be working from going to school, whether you go to college or not, and then getting into something. It's not connecting.
Yeah. Well, you in the Buyers Agency Institute, you would be seeing a lot of people making life changes, swapping careers to come over and do buyers advocacy. Would you not?
Yeah, I am. And, you know, to be honest, I'm also very passionate because, like, I was one of those guys who, like we've discussed, I ended up I studied building construction. Don't know why I studied it. That was for 5 years. And then got into development. And then that wasn't right either. Even though I was really blessed. I work with the smartest guys, honestly, in Australia. Like, I'm very blessed for the learnings, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I then started off like just fresh off the boat, really trying to build something. And so I'm very passionate about when I am speaking to people, or my team is those people who are looking for that next stage of their journey around, you know, that mindset around you don't need to be this experienced like Zuckerberg, for example, wasn't in the social space before he launched Facebook. He didn't jump into MySpace and go, okay, I need to learn that niche. I'm at MySpace and then I can compete with, you know, so I think I'm very passionate about helping people see beyond the limitation and really accelerate. So, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of it and I'm trying to inspire as much as I can.
And I guess these days as well, and I don't know if it's been I don't know whether it's come over the last couple of years or what, but I feel like there is a hell of a lot more acceptance out there about that work-life balance and working to live, not living to work.
Massive. That's my journey at the moment. Like I'm as I said, I'm trying to work less, earn more, and enjoy the day more. Like genuinely, you know, enjoy the day more, and I guess not have everything so, like, what I find, and it's been my predicament, is work was the most important thing for a lot of my life. It was the most important thing for me. Now I'm trying to put other stuff that's more important in front of it. So that's going to get more airtime than work. And that's how I'm trying to kind of prioritize now, you know?
And I think it's really important. You've got to find that balance. And I feel like balance is a word that's being used a lot lately. But if you don't have balance, that's when the seesaw kind of falls off its edges and something has to give. And a lot of the time, it's your own personal health and well-being that is the one that gets dropped behind. It's just a recent thing, you know, in the last 12 to 18 months that I've really kind of understood and appreciated how important it is for me to be at my highest performing level, to look after my family, my business, the people, my staff, things like that. I didn't put enough, I suppose, attention or limelight on the importance of me being at my best. It was always, you know, I'll look after everybody else first, and then if there's a little bit left, I'll do me. But it's flipped, which meant my whole life has flipped. The mentality behind all of it has flipped, and as a result, things are becoming easier and life is becoming less stressful. And you're right, you stop and you enjoy the day and prioritize really on what the priorities are, not just what the expectation of running a business and work is.
Yeah, it's true. And as a leader, we're all leaders, I think, all of us, irrespective of our title, we're leaders. You're right. Like, we need to be not just physically fit, we need to be mentally fit. I've been studying sport a lot lately, just about the mental performance around sport and the techniques they use to the mental coaches use with the athletes. And it's I think it's going to start to transition into business a lot more around how these athletes are trained mentally to really perform at optimal levels. But I think, you know, really making sure you floss your mind. Like, you know, a lot of people floss the teeth, but what about like flossing the mind to really, as you can, you know, you were saying earlier, just show up and really be there mentally in a positive way so you can serve better, serve your team, serve your clients, serve your family, serve your friends, serve everyone around you better. And that starts obviously with you and I, or with whoever. It starts with you first, and you have to do the work. You can't expect, if you're not flossing your mind every day, whatever it is for you, you can't expect to be sharp in the mind. Like you're misleading yourself, you're lying to yourself. And so you need to be doing something to stay sharp, from a mental perspective.
100%. That is so true. And there's many different ways that you can do that. Everyone's got a different ritual, journey, pattern, whatever it might be. There's so many different ways. It's just about finding the way that works for you, and that is something that you can introduce into your life to become a habit. So through your experiences, through corporate, running your own business, CEO, and now educator, what do you think is the defining lesson in your life that you have learnt that really does kind of embody who you are now? Was there a tipping point? Like, was there one moment, one lesson that's really kind of gone, no, this is who I am, this is my purpose, and this is when it was cemented?
I did a 10-day, I'm going to answer it. I'll try and answer it as specifically as I can. But I've always been very introspective, soul-searching, very open to learning and growth and improving my life, and in every aspect, always being very vulnerable to expand in that way. I went to a Vipassana retreat. It's basically a 10 or 11, I forget, it's 10 or 11 days. It's a silent retreat. You're not allowed to talk, which I thought was going to be difficult, which was actually the easy part, because I actually enjoyed that, not talking. But what became, so you for 11 days, you meditate in a hall. Females and males are separate. And you're meditating for around 8 to 11 hours a day on a floor with some cushions, and it's excruciating, the pain. And you're allowed to move. You're not supposed to lie down, and you face yourself. And you're not allowed to make eye contact during the entire 11 days with anyone, not one person. You're not allowed to read, you're not allowed to write. There's nothing. There is nothing. And so, I was sleeping in a dorm with 8 guys. So it's very humble in terms of how you live, and the food, very minimal food. Like your dinner's like bananas and a few things. And so it was during that time, which was a pivotal time for me, where I really did face myself. And I thought facing myself was meditating for half an hour at home, or an hour at home, or going away for 2 days. But that was a time where I really faced myself. And it was at that point, that this was about 6 years ago, that I did make it a commitment to try and really, I guess, incorporate a lot more, for me, like peace in my life. And hence why, like, I have moved, and you can see my background. Like, I used to live in the city, right? And I was addicted to that, and I've moved out of the city. I live on the beaches now, and I'm trying to live life more peacefully. I think happiness is something that I'm really trying to embrace every day. Like, I've realized money doesn't buy it. I think it's bullshit. Yes, it creates options for you, but you need to, I think, and especially for me, during that time when I was sitting with myself, I started to realize that the more busy I was, the more money I was making, the more people I was hiring, more clients we were signing, all that stuff, I actually wasn't becoming more fulfilled. So I acknowledged that, which was a really hard thing to swallow at the time. And that's why I decided to then, I guess, start to manifest more of a different life for me. And interesting enough, I resigned, I think about 4 years after that. And then I have changed my lifestyle a lot. So, yeah, I think peace and happiness for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really inspirational. I don't know how I would go for 11 days not being able to look at anyone or talk to anyone.
You can escape. So not escape, you can leave. So you're not allowed to speak to anyone. You can speak to some instructors that are on there, like very minimally. But you do see people drop off, because I nearly flipped out on like day 8 or 9. I went into the hall where you eat, and you don't look at anyone. So you see the same people, the same guys every day at the same times. And I started to flip out, and I had to put water on my face, because I nearly did leave on one day. But I just got through it. It is difficult, and it's definitely an experience. And I felt the calling to do it, so I did it. So yeah,
that's amazing. Good on you. Those kinds of things and doing those really opening experiences, that excites me. I can't wait for the world to go back to normal, to be able to do, well, not normal, but as normal as we can get, to be able to do those kinds of things. That's exciting. Like the lessons and the learning. I can't imagine. You're right. I'm exactly the same. I think sitting there meditating for an hour a day is me knowing myself. I'm doing my part. I'm definitely doing a hell of a lot more than I used to, but that would be really, really confronting. And well done for making the changes.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. So before we finish up, is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
I believe, including myself as well, a lot of people don't really value time enough. What I mean by that is I think it's a big fundamental reason why a lot of people end up in the wrong career, because they don't value their time. If you end up in the wrong career and you knew it, you'd get out. I know people that have financial commitments, okay, and it's hard, but I feel like time we can't buy. We can buy a lot of things, but we can't buy time. And so I think we're put on this planet, all of us, like it's a privilege to be granted a human life. Like to be in this body on this earth as a human, I think's like we've won lotto.
It's pretty amazing.
Super challenging. Obviously, like every day there's so much going on, but it's a privilege. And so I think the fact that we were granted a human life, you, me, everyone, I believe intuitively, and I believe it through my body, that we were all put here to do something that was meant for us, right? Like something unique. We had a certain talent, skill to really, I think, provide. So I do think it's important for all of us to be working really with intent and purpose, and to not settle, to really not settle, because time is limited. And I do believe it's important to really enjoy what you're doing, like genuinely enjoy what you're doing. So that to me is, I think, because the working life outside of sleep, it actually occupies the majority of our time on this planet as well. And so I think it's an incredibly important thing to be doing that with intent and purpose.
Yeah, I agree. What an amazing message. It's so true. We have very little time on this earth as well, and wasting it doing things that make us miserable or unhappy or not fulfilling our purpose, we are taking for granted what short time we've got. And, as we've seen with world, life can end in a moment and we can't control it. So I think you're right. It's about finding the purpose and doing what fills up your cup.
Yeah, because I do think a lot of people just don't like to think about mortality, and hence the world the way it is. I think obviously if you really cared, your kids and the generations, it wouldn't be going the way it's going in terms of how it's treated. That's another subject, but I think it's important to be really trying to find why you're here, what you're doing, and if you're doing the wrong thing, just get out of it. You can work out a solution, get out of it, and try and really find what you're designed to do.
I absolutely agree. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate your time more than you know. Great chat with you, and I will see you very, very soon.
Thanks, Kiani. Nice to chat.